colleagues and distinguished guests. My name is Mahmoud Rahimi, one of the students from the Faculty of Education. It's my pleasure to be your moderator for today's Lunch Talk 44, titled Is America's Education Empire Crumbling in the Shadow of China's Rise? Hosted by the Faculty of Education at Universitas Islam International Indonesia. We are honored by your presence at this important discussion. To formally commence our event, it's my distinct honor to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Education, Professor Nina Nurmila, PhD, to deliver the opening remarks. Please join me in giving her a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Mahmud. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, it is semester break, so I don't see many of you. And if you have already finished your lunch, please come forward to the front, yeah? Uh, so I would like to repeat again. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin sayyidil mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi syrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli amma ba'du. So we start on time, 1 p.m. because even though not many of you here, but we broadcast our lunch talk to the online audience. So I would like I really and I really appreciate for those of you who come on time. So we decide to start sharp at 1 p.m. Yeah. And the speaker today of our lunch talk, Dr. Alpa Amir Rahman, for some of you, he is not new because since 2023, he has joining us as a guest lecturer and together with me, teaching education in a pluralistic society, education and equity, yeah. And but I would like to welcome him officially to the Faculty of Education because he just started his appointment as a permanent lecturer at the Faculty of Education Triple IU beginning the 1st of August 2025. Of course, he is not a new lecturer, he is a senior lecturer that I expect that his moving from Untirta Banten to Triple IU can give mutual benefit, yeah, for Triple IU to have his expertise and then for his career. I hope that by moving to Triple IU can faster his process to become a full professor. Yeah, yeah. Many people do not know how to write, but he is a journalist. I think he will not have any difficulties of publishing in the international reputable journal. Yeah, and today he will speak about the whether America's education empire crumbling in the shadow of China's rise. Yeah. I'm educated in Australia. Australia is younger in compared to Australia. Sorry, Australia is younger country in compared to America. So when I visited America, there are so many established university in America with the top ranking, yeah, like Columbia University, Yale, Harvard. Yeah, welcome everyone. uh, but I also visited China recently into 2024, and China is like a rising star. So there are many also uh, uh, qualified or high ranking university like University of Hong Kong, Fudan, Peking, Wuhan University, and many others. So let's hear from Dr. Alpa Amir Rahman today about the comparison in these two countries and the possible opportunities that we can have as one of the countries in the global south. And I would like to welcome Professor Faris Nur. And then here we see the lecturer Dr. Bambang, Dr. Afifah Muharrika, and our fellow from German. welcome. I don't remember, I mean, your name, but I'm glad that to see you, and also Bapak, welcome here. Thank you very much. Enjoy the speech from Dr. Alpa Amir Rahman today. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Nina Nurmila, for the insightful and warm opening remarks. So a few housekeeping notes before introducing our honorable speaker of today. So we kindly requested that you please switch your mobile phones in any other electronic devices to silent mode for the duration of the talk. Following the presentation, we have a 30 minutes Q&A session. We ask that you please hold your question until that time. The presentation will run for approximately 1 hour and concluding around 2 p.m., followed by the Q&A until 2:30. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker for today, Dr. Alfa Amir Rahman. So Dr. Alfa is an educator and scholar with a profound specialization in education policy and social science. With over 2 decades of dedicated expertise, he has been instrumental in fostering inclusive and equitable learning environments, making significant contribution to education reform both in Indonesia and abroad. His distinguished academic journey includes an MPhil in education from the University of Sydney, where he focused on education decentralization, and a PhD in social science from the University of Amsterdam. His doctoral dissertation critically examined peace education in Moluccas, skillfully balancing global models with local interest. He further honed his expertise through prestigious postdoctoral fellowship at the Institute of Southeast Asia Studies in Singapore, and the Royal Institute of Southeast Asia and Caribbean Studies in the Netherlands. Throughout his career, Dr. Alpha has held several key positions, including Director of the Southeast Asian Ministries of Education Organization Regional Open Learning Center called SIAMO or SIAMO LAC, and he remains Special Advisor to Indonesian Minister of Education and Culture, simultaneously contributing to international education dialogues, such as curriculum design for peace and human rights at Outreach University and research in and conflict resolution. To highlight a few of his scholarly publications, which portrays his publication like Sketches of Asia's Society, People's Culture, Education, and Technology in 2021, and his recent publication, Local Wisdom-Based Multicultural Education, 2025, and Intellectual Discourse, along with articles in journals like Southeast Asia Research, highlight his influence on decentralized and multicultural education system. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Alfa. Sir, the time and floors is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Innal hamdalillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min syururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina may yahdihillahu fala mudhillalah wa may yudlil fala hadiyalah. Asyhadu la ilaha illallah wahdahu la syarikalah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh la nabiyya ba'd. Good afternoon, everyone, esteemed colleagues and students at Triple IU. It is an honor for me that you have decided to come to this lunch talk. And thank you for joining this on this I think is a very vital topic to the best of my knowledge. Is America's long-standing dominance in education beginning to crumble under the formidable shadow of China's rapid rise? I'm not pretending myself to be an expert in international relation, but this global shift, really thrilled me. And I've been paying attention, to this global phenomenon, this recent shift of power relations between US and China and their direct impact on education, and especially, of course, on our educational life here at the university, Triple IU, where Most of the students are from Indonesia and also from global South nations. The student body is so pluralistic, is so vibrant, and I think it is very important for us to pay attention to this global shift. And I would like also to hear from you later after the discussions, your perspectives. We have here a prominent guests. We have Amanda from Germany. We have Professor Faris Nur also, whom I believe will have uh, an attention to this matter. So this is not merely an abstract geopolitical debate, ladies and gentlemen. It's a critical exploration of how the shifting dynamics directly impact educational landscape worldwide. Our core thesis. So I would like to present my core thesis first before I start my presentation. Our core thesis argues that while the United States grapples with declining performance metrics, internal policy disruptions, and external geopolitical pressure, it still holds a commanding lead in higher education quality, groundbreaking innovation, and enduring global influence. However, China's aggressive investment, unparalleled STEM advancement, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and strategic initiatives are swiftly closing the gap between the achievement of the US and China. Sorry. Yeah, so this is our thesis. So for nations and students in the global south, the rivalry is not about picking side. It's not about whether we're going to go for the United States or for China, um, but it's about strategically leveraging these changes to foster independent educational growth, avoid over-reliance on any single power, and build resilient systems. To enrich our discussion, we will draw lessons from emerging Asian models like South Korea's technology-driven education, Singapore's neutral and merit-based approach, Vietnam, foreign direct investment food reforms, and Japan also with its precision-oriented innovation ecosystem. These examples illustrate diverse pathways. So it's not only a single pathway, but there are also diverse pathways for navigating the US-China rivalry. So we try to turn potential rivalries into catalysts for balanced progress in a multipolar world. Throughout this presentation, we'll delve into economic foundations, aid comparisons, education metrics, strengths and strengths on both sides, implication for the global south, and finally, tangible policies or tangible steps that we would like to pursue as people from the global south trying to make sense of this global shift. So let's embark on this journey. Next slide. And this is the economic background, US versus China in 2025. Our analyst posits that the US is under significant strain from factors like slipping international test scores, budgetary constraint exacerbated by trade wars, and controversial policy shifts such as bans on DEI. This is very important, ladies and gentlemen. The DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion programs in the US. So under Trump administration, it is being abolished. Yeah, so uh, there is no what you call it, um, a policy, that would defend the minority groups, etc., things like that. Maybe Amanda later will try. We can contribute to that, and yet the United States maintains undeniable superiority in areas like elite higher education institutions, fostering creativity and innovation, and exerting soft power through global alumni networks. Sorry. Okay. On the flip side, China's trajectory is one of the explosive growth, propelled by massive state investment in research and development dominance in STEM fields and initiatives like BRI. I think everybody understand this. BRI stands for Belt and Road Initiatives. Yeah, it is established in 1918, if I'm not mistaken. Let's have a look at it later. But it is actually rooted in 1950s when the Chinese government tried to help the independence movement of African countries. Yeah, so it's almost the same like you said. We will talk about it later. Okay, now let's go to the next slide. This is the economic background. US versus China in 2025. To truly understand this educational rivalry, ladies and gentlemen, we must first examine the economic foundation, as a nation's economic health directly influences its capacity for educational investment, innovation, and international outreach. As shown in this comparative table for 2025 forecast, the US retains the world's largest nominal GDP at $28.5 trillion, but its growth rate has slowed down to 2.3% from 2.5% in 2024, largely to the ongoing trade tension and domestic policy uncertainties. On research and development, the US leads with 3.5% of GDP after a decline of PISA, totaling around $1 trillion, sustaining hubs like Silicon Valley, but stagnant growth and manufacturing drove to 16% of global output shift job market towards services, pressuring curricula to adapt to AI and biotech amid disruptions like DEI bans. So in stark contrast, China's $19 trillion GDP is accelerating at 4.8%, rebounding from 4.5% in 2024 through export-led strategies and industrial policies like Made in China 2025. Their research and development at 2.5% of GDP or $456 billion is rising rapidly, and it is projected to eclipse the US by 2030 despite tariffs, enabling massive STEM investment and top PISA performances. However, trade war impacts shave 1.3 points of growth, with youth employment at 14%, intensifying the need for employable graduates, often prioritizing technical skills over liberal arts. Manufacturing dominance at 28.7% globally bolsters supply chain resilience, but risks embedding state-centric ideologies via BRI scholarship. Yeah. For the global south, the divergence means navigating reduced US aid. So we're going to have a reduced US aid amid slowdowns, while at the same time, we also have to be able to capitalize on Chinese investment, but with vigilance against debt trap. I think some of the countries like Pakistan, they're already experiencing that. So emerging Asian examples shine here, like Vietnam's impressive 6.5% growth, fueled by $30 billion in foreign direct investment, has hiked education spending to 5.8% of GDP, fostering tech collaboration with both powers. Singapore's stable 3.5% growth and 2.1% unemployment leverage its financial hub status for multilingual STEM education, modeling neutrality. And South Korea 3.0 growth drives 4.8% research and development investment, blending US innovation with Chinese productions. So this is the Korea try to merge, to integrate US creativity, US innovation with Chinese efficiency. So this is a model that we might have to consider to adopt. Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. This is again the economic background. I already mentioned that. If you have already the presentation PowerPoint. You may have a look at it in details. I think we're going to go to the next one. This is not really in my paper, but you can see US versus China, renewable energy capacity through time. Also, Chinese leading, yeah, ahead of the US. And also the China versus world manufacturing output. You can see the red. This is all dominated by China. Yeah, $4.16 trillion, and the United States only captured 2.489 trillion dollars together with India and Germany. So we can see how powerful the Chinese manufacturing output. They produce almost everything from needle to jet. Yeah, they produce almost everything. China proclaimed itself independence in 1949, Pak Bambang, and we Indonesia proclaimed independence in 1945. Yeah, we are actually, China is actually late, 4 years, but they are now maybe hundreds of years ahead of us. So, yeah, so what's wrong with us? And EV automakers also. Look at on the top, BYD is leading. Yeah, is leading. Tesla, made in the United States, made in Elon Musk. Only the second position. So we can see how powerful the Chinese automakers. I attended also a car exhibition in Serpong the other day, and they produce a model, a BYD model, which is very cheap. It's only 100, 200 millions rupiahs, yeah, which crushing the price of other electronic vehicles price. Okay, next. Okay, now we go to soft diplomacy. We have soft diplomacy, USAID versus China aid. We try to compare these uh, soft diplomacy institutions. Yeah. So USAID was established in 1961 under the Foreign Assistance Act as part of the U.S. Department of State, evolving from post-World War II efforts to promote global stability and counter communism. Can you imagine? It was established to counter communism. Yeah, at the time, 1960s, with an annual budget of about $32 billion before its surprising dissolution just recently in 2025 under Trump administration. Yeah. So we can see how this will affect the soft diplomacy of the US in trying to influence global South countries or around the world to promote their democratic values of pluralism, etc., that I think have been having a profound impact on our life. Yeah, we can see many of us, in non-government organizations, students, they're promoting here. They are very overwhelmed from democratic values. I think that is also as a result of years of soft diplomacy by the US. Okay, and so in education specifically, USAID has funded scholarship, yeah, teacher training programs, since we are in education faculty, and curriculum development that emphasize pluralism, critical thinking, and civic education. Yeah. I think we in Indonesia are very familiar with this kind of program, civic education, uh, critical thinking. Yeah, those are values, advanced by the United States through their USAID. Yeah. So this approach serves as a vehicle for U.S. cultural influence and alliance building, advancing ideals like human rights, economic liberalization. However, critics like William Esterly and Dambisa Moyo argue that it is often laced with new imperialism, imposing conditions tied to U.S. geopolitical interests, such as market-oriented reforms, yeah, that can widen inequalities or even mask intelligence operations, leading to inefficiency and local resentment. And the 2025 dissolution by Trump administration creates a significant vacuum, potentially eroding US credibility in the global south and ceding influence to rivals like China. Yeah. So in contrast, China aid, founded only in 2018 officially, but it is originated in 1950s when they are trying to help the independence of African nations. Yeah. So 2018 2018 officially as a vice ministerial agency under China's State Council. Centralized previously fragmented aid efforts from ministries like Commerce and Foreign Affairs, aligning with President Xi Jinping vision of a community with a shared future for mankind. So China's values, they don't talk about democracy. They talk about building trust. They talk about community with shared future of mankind. So this is in contrast to values promoted by USAID. Yeah? So it is rooted in 1950s aid to African independence movement. And um, provides around $40 billion annually of grants, interest-free loans, and concessional financing across over 160 countries around the world. What do they prioritize? They prioritize infrastructure, agriculture, health, education in the global south. So educationally, China Aid has had funded over 500,000 scholarships since 2018. This is not included before that, when they started in 1950s. Vocational training, university partnership under BRI, aiming to build technical skills and foster long-term loyalty without political strings, without political conditions. USAID usually has political conditions. You have to promote democracy, you have to promote human rights. But China, they don't have political string. Yeah, in this case, yeah, they don't say that. Promoting the Chinese model of rapid development. Yet, as noted by scholars like Deborah Brotigam, it is criticized. Yeah, it is criticized. China Aid has been criticized for lacking transparency. No public audits until 2024. 2024 onward, yes, they have audit now. So this contributed to debt traps in places like Sri Lanka and Pakistan, and advancing what they say with the Western critiques, yeah, what the Western critics say, advancing authoritarian government that prioritize stability over human rights. Yeah, this is also debatable. I think in the end of the day, whether it benefits most people. Yeah. So USAID values-based conditional aid contrasts sharply with China's aid pragmatic, no interference model. But both, yeah, I should mention, both are very strategic. Yeah, we have to pay attention to both of them and try to capitalize on both of them. So, um, next one, yeah. I think that's it for this one. We go to the next one. This is the table. If you already have the PowerPoint presentation, you may have a look at it in details. Yeah, I can provide with you with some references later. I don't put the references here in my presentation, but I have the list of references if you are interested in having them. Next, please. Is okay. Let's try to compare now U.S. China education comparison 2025 metrics. It is very interesting to compare this in United States. They have EV League. In China, they have C9 League, consisting of prominent universities as well. Yeah. So let's go into that. So now let's turn to the heart of the matter, a head-to-head comparison of key education indicators between the US and China in 2025, as captured in this comprehensive table drawn from sources like OECD, QS, and Times Higher Education. Starting with foundational education, PISA scores reveal a dramatic contrast, ladies and gentlemen. The US aggregates around 1454, with math at 465 and science at 485. Both, I should say, both below OECD average, highlighting challenges like socioeconomic disparities, fragmented curricula, and lingering post-pandemic effect that undermine basic skills in tech-driven economy. China is projected 1605 with math and science near 580 to 590, position it as a global leader thanks to its rigorous exam focus system in urban hubs like Beijing and Shanghai. Though this may not fully represent rural inequities, but as you can see, they are very rigorous exam focus system. As you can see in one one event in China when they have a national examination. Everybody was quiet. Everybody was supporting the exam taker by providing public buses. So it was a very serious event in China when they have a national examination for their students. So they really exam focused system, particularly in urban hubs like Beijing and Shanghai. In higher education, ladies and gentlemen, the US dominance is still clear. 197 institution and QS ranking, with 27 in the top 100, including MIT and Harvard. MIT number one, Harvard number five, and over 200 in Times Higher Education, with 12 in the top 50, excelling in research quality and industry ties to academic freedom and endowments. China, on the other hand, strides with 71 in QS and 97 in Times Higher Education, featuring 5 to 6 top 100 like Tsinghua at 17, number 17, driven by state funding and the C9 League. Yeah, in the US they have Ivy League, in China they have C9 League, but still trails in breadth and diversity. International students hosting underscores soft power of both countries. The US attracts 1.1 million or 16% global share, mainly from India and China. However, down 4% amid recent tensions, generating $40 billion economically, actually, and fostering exchanges, cultural exchanges, political exchanges between the students of different countries. STEM PhD shows China's volume edge over 77,000 annually versus United States only 40,000. Focus on quality and entrepreneurship. Yeah, so there's a difference when you compare the STEM PhD. Yeah, China's is ahead. They produce 77,000 graduates. Yeah, compared to US, only 40,000 graduates in STEM PhD. And innovation metrics also favors US quality, with 600,000 patents in high impact areas and more than 150 Nobels since 2000, compared to China's only 1.5 million quantity driven patents. Quantity driven patents, yeah? Not quality. And around 10 Nobel's Prize. Spending wise, US education at 5.6% and R&D at 3.5%, supporting innovation, while China 4.2% and surging 2.4 position for overtaking. Globally, US influence via networks wanes due to policies. It is decreasing because of the recent policies. While China BRI spans 150 countries. Asian Insight enrich this. South Korea and Singapore hybridize US quality with Chinese scale. So we have to be able to also, we can learn from them. Vietnam also scales up via collaborations. Yeah. This is the comparison, ladies and gentlemen, US and China education comparison. If you have my presentation, you may have a look at the details. Let's go to analyzing the matrix quality versus quantity. Having reviewed the raw materials, the raw metrics, let's analyze what they truly mean in the tale of two educational systems. The US emphasizing quality, diversity, and foundational innovation, versus China's focus on quantity, efficiency, and rapid applications. So these are striking differences. The US edge lies in creativity and research depth. Its lower PISA, I should say, the lower PISA scores below OECD perhaps reflects a system prioritizing critical thinking over rote learning, not fully captured by standardized tests like PISA. While dominating QS and Times Higher Education, rankings, with institutions like MIT fostering interdisciplinary breakthroughs. This translates to 600,000 high-impact patents in biotech and artificial intelligence, more than 150 Nobel Prizes since 2000, and soft power through 1.1 million international students building global network around the world. Though inequities and policy strains like funding cuts risk eroding this, particularly under Trump administration. On the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, China's strengths shine in numbers, in scale. Urban selective PISA leadership at 16.5 drives STEM dominance with 77,000 PhD in STEMs and 1.5 million patents fueling applied technology like electronic vehicles and 5G, supported by surging R&D and BRI infrastructure-led influence across 150 countries. So both countries are competing, but in a uniquely different approach. Okay, and the next one, slide 7. I think I should just go to this. Okay, now we are going to see the signs of strains in US education. Despite its prominence, despite its strength, the US education system is showing clear signs of strain that threaten its global preeminence, as evidenced by declining metrics and disruptive policies. PISA 2022 PISA 2022 data with projections into 2025 placed the US below OECD average in math and science. A trend worsened by economic slowdown from trade wars that constrain remedial investment and exacerbate inequalities. Manufacturing's decline to 16% global share, demand reskilling, but budget cuts make it harder. Trump 2025 policy amplify this. DEI bans, the solution, the policy of diversity, equity, and inclusion affecting over 50 American universities erode diverse talent pipelines, crucial for innovation. While USAID dissolution cuts $32 billion in annual aid, limiting pluralism programs abroad and creating vacuum for rivals like China Aid. Tariffs induce GDP drag 0.9 points, and inflationary pressure reduce research and development grants, stifling hubs like Silicon Valley, with Chinese student enrollment dropping 4% to 277,000 amid geopolitical tensions, like Israel-Palestine framing activism as threats. Yeah, this is also a problem among American universities that people believe it is restricting freedom of expression. The risk brain drain and siloed knowledge, particularly impacting global South students with fewer scholarship and collaborations. So we have to be able to face the reality that the scholarship from the United States this might be reducing. Yeah. And Singapore overweight volatility with stable funding and low unemployment. Vietnam also rapidly improved via 5.8% education spending. We can learn from the best practices. Next one, the next slide is, this is the US strengths, higher education and in innovation dominance, ladies and gentlemen. Amid these backdrops, these trends, the US education systems exhibit remarkable resilience and superiority, especially in higher education and innovation, setting global standards for excellence. The QS 2025 rankings feature 197 US institutions, with 27 in the top 100 and powerhouses like MIT and Harvard, respectively 1 and 5 number, while Times Higher Education shows over 200 rank, with 12 in the top 50, excelling in research impact, in international collaborations. and employer reputation thanks to a flexible, market-driven ecosystem that promote entrepreneurship. Yeah, this is uh, a plus in US higher education. And this is bolstered again by innovation outputs. 600,000 patents in 2024, leading in quality across electronics and biotech, supported by $1 trillion in research and development, or 3.5% GDP via agencies like NIH, and NSF, even amid 2025 cuts. And indirect cost caps at 15% facing challenges. The decentralized model allows private to private partnership. The 150 plus Nobel Prizes in sciences since 2000 reflect curiosity driven research, contrasting China's applied focus. So China seems to be much more pragmatic than the US, yeah, in terms of research. Um, okay, next slide. This is China's rapid rise. Yeah, let's compare this to the US investment and STEM power. So they really focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. With 4.8% GDP growth in 2025, ladies and gentlemen, China's research and development at 2.4%, or $456 billion surge towards surpassing the US. It is predicted to eclipse the US by 2030. Funding STEM infrastructure and leading patent filings at 1.5 million in 2024 for applied tech like artificial intelligence and semiconductors. And the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, amplifies this. In the first half of 2025, $66.2 billion in contracts and $57.1 billion in investment across 69 countries, up from 67 in 2024. Integrate education via joint campuses and technology transfers with over 500,000 scholarships. Yeah, I understand that they are here. Also, there are a significant number of Indonesian students who are also now studying in Chinese universities on their government scholarships. This addresses 14% urban youth unemployment through export-oriented training. Yeah, PISA leadership 580, 590 in math and science, but this is taken from urban samples, underscores discipline, producing 77,000 STEM PhDs for innovations like 5G. This is almost double than the US. Almost double than the US, yeah. However, critiques highlight sampling biases. It was believed to be taken in urban areas, not in rural areas, the PISA. And also what they highlight, especially people from the Western world, academic censorship, limiting pluralism, and BRI debt traps or ideological export eroding trust. This is actually debatable as well. For the global south, affordable tech education, affordable technology education, this has filled US voids. Yeah, because of the dissolution of USAID, yeah, the policy of under recent administration, it is this affordable technology education is filling US voids. However, it risks, people warn, it risks dependency. Next slides. What are the implications for the global south? The interplay of US strains, US decline, and China's rise has profound implications for the global south, creating a landscape of opportunities intertwined with vulnerabilities where economic shift magnify educational battles. Yeah. US slowdown, including USAID dissolution and DEI erosion, principle to pluralism erosion, slash scholarship and pluralistic access, potentially stifling critical thinking, essential for democracy. While China's BRI provide infrastructure and skill, but heightens dependency and cultural homogenization risk. Trade wars disrupt mobility and supply chains, forging polarized choice amid global conflicts like Israel and Palestine, which has been polarizing American universities, if you may have already read in the newspaper. And yet, the 2025 insight reveals upside. Rivalry drives reform, Indo-Pacific engagement, and public goods like infrastructure, allowing diversified options in artificial intelligence geopolitics where non-alignment shape standards. Foreign aid competition see China outpace in scale, but lag in transparency, marginalizing voices without navigation. So emerging ASEAN models like South Korea, Singapore, Vietnam, they use ASEAN for a balance. I think we are going to go almost to the end of the slides. So this is the call for actions, actionable steps for the Global South. To harness this implication, ladies and gentlemen, reforms are essential for balanced competitiveness. The US should reinvest in equity again, revive the US, revive the USAID like tools to counter BRI of China. Yeah. While China is expected also to enhance freedom and more transparency. So we have an expectation from both powers. For Global South institution like IIIU, here are concrete recommendations. First, diversify partnership strategically through trilateral agreements like IIIU with US institution, Chinese institution as well. Yeah. So we have to embrace both of them. Join STEM labs with 20 to 30% funding from each, blending innovation and scale. And I think what the university has been done, we have already opened a new faculty of Science and Technology, focusing on data science, mathematics, computer science, information engineering, information system, statistics. I think these are all the playground that we can also make use, to when we try to forge cooperation with China. Yeah. So we don't only focus on social sciences, even in the faculty of education like us. For example, if we want to do research, I think it is better for us, to move towards more on the technological issues in societies, for example. Yeah. So again, this is an opportunity for us, for a global south like us. Yeah. The number two is build resilience by allocating 10 to 15% budget to local research and development. We have to be able to persuade our government, to have a hybrid curriculum that merge US critical thinking with Chinese efficiency. I think this is what the Singapore also has been trying to adopt, the curriculum, the South Korea, they're playing smart, they adopt both US critical thinking, US creativity, US innovation, and then they try to merge that, to integrate that with Chinese efficiency. Yeah. Number three is advocate non-alignment via expanded ASEAN networks, capping debt at 5% GDP to avoid traps. Four, boost mobility with intra-South fellowship aiming for 50% enrollment growth, fostering regional exchanges. Yeah, we can have exchanges also, cooperation with other African countries, for example, other Asian countries, to avoid dependency on single power. Yeah. And number five is monitor and adapt by establishing a rivalry watch group for annual reviews, ensuring agility. We here in the Faculty of Education, I think we have already established a research center, and then one of the units is about the policy. I think we can also try to enlarge this not only on national issues but all global issues like this, to keep an eye on the rivalry between the US and China, and then try to explore the opportunities that they can this rivalry can provide us. Concluding remarks. In conclusion, our exploration reveals a dynamic rivalry The US maintains leads in quality, in innovation, in creativity, and higher education, but they face strains from metrics, from internal policies, from economics that demand urgent fixes. China, at the same time, surged with scale, with numbers, yeah, investment, STEM power, yeah, more PhD in STEM, almost doubling the US, narrowing gaps but grappling with creativity and transparency issue. For the global South, models like South Korea, Singapore, Vietnam, Russia, Japan offer paths to hybridize strengths, turning competition into a catalyst for resilience, economic integration, sovereignty in a multipolar world. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is not about choosing sides, whether you want to go for US or for China. It's about strategic navigation to advance our education and our nations. So, let's leverage these shifts, advocate for tangible policies for strategic reforms, and position our university as a leader in this era. So thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Afa, for the insightful and thought-provoking presentation. Let's move on to a Q&A session. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and kindly state your name and affiliation before posing a question.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Could you please go to the second last slide? Actually, I would like to ask about is it your proposal about the no, the second last, yeah, just before the conclusion, about the possibility or possible, yeah, possible steps to move further. So what I would like to ask, for example, number one, in the bracket 20 to 30% funding each. So I would like to ask this list whether this is your proposal, and how do you come to that numbers, like trilateral US, China, Global South Labs, 20 to 30% funding, and then 10 to 15% budget to local R&D. So that's what I would like to know. So this is your proposal, and if this is your proposal, how you make it happen for Indonesia to take part of this reform. Thank you very much.
So anybody else would like to ask a question? Sure. Sorry. Maybe Pafaris first and then the gentleman at the end.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the talk, and I think it's a very important and timely one. I have a question, but it's a general one, and this relates to the observations and conclusions you made at the end of your presentation about how we, perhaps in Indonesia or Southeast Asia, can reform. Now, the question I have for you is not related to what you've presented, which I agree with, but the broader context of the evolution of higher education in Southeast Asia. I think that when we look at many post-colonial states in Southeast Asia, there's always been the assumption that universities serve a political purpose as well, which is the production of the middle class. And the middle class has always been seen as the supporter of the government or the regime of the day. And this might be one of the reasons why reform is so difficult, because universities are seen as performing not only an educational function, but a political function. So when you talk about reform, if you look at a country like Indonesia, now, unfortunately, I have to say this, yeah, in some parts of Southeast Asia, we see a large section of our society not interested in STEM subjects, in science, biology, medicine, but in things that that are in the domain of cultural politics, religious studies, or what have you. And so we have a mismatch between the production of graduates and the needs of the market and the needs of the state. Now, my question to you is this, a simple question. How do we convince states that this reform is necessary? Because politicians think of the next election. And if you were to maybe reduce funding for, say, certain subjects, certain disciplines, and promote funding for science, engineering, there will be a political backlash. We know this, yeah, in Southeast Asia. This is a political problem. It's got nothing to do with education per se, but I'd like to know what you think. I mean, how do we do this? China doesn't have this problem. America doesn't have this problem, but this is a very Southeast Asian problem. So how do we address this?
Yeah, one more question at the end.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Pak Alpha, for your very insightful presentation. I'm Zero from Social Science. Somehow my question is similar to Farid's question. So many people, including this presentation, offer excellent suggestion how societies in the global south can improve their education. But the question, for me, the question is, how can we press the state to do the reform? Just like we know that in Indonesia, I think we don't like a proposal for reform. But once the government is changed, the taste is changed as well. So, so somehow what government B does is to change what the government A has done. And somehow it simply erased what the step has been made somehow in our experience. So the key question, I think, is what can we do to press the government to do the reform? And in some cases, this is what I read from Political Economy of Education and Technology. It seems that societies, the governments and the state, they are less likely to do the reform unless they feel threatened. So if Chinese government, they pursued reforms massively, right? Somehow this theory explain well because they feel threatened by the US, threatened by maybe by the growth of the South Korea and others. Unless being threatened, it seems very few government or no government do significant reform, including in education. In some countries, I think South Korea, Singapore, the way they did the reform is led by the state. And these countries will also threatened somehow. South Korea was threatened by North Korea at that time, communist and South Korea competitions. Singapore, as a small country, it feels threatened by geopolitics of Southeast Asia. Well, countries like Indonesia, we feel we are big, we are rich in natural resources, and education is long-term investment. It cannot be seen in 5 years. Well, political cycle is always 5 years, right? So certainly politicians can say, I will do this, but in practice, few actually done. So what do you think? What can be done actually? Well, in fact, the reform requires political conditions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Could you please restate your name? State your name again.
Sirojudin Arif. Thank you.
Sirajuddin.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your comments and questions. I would like to address first to Ibu Nina's question. This is number one, diversify partnership. Strategically, trilateral US, China, Global South Labs, 23% funding, this is the numbers, an ideal numbers, that we could have, but in reality, of course, it will face political challenges. Yeah, this is just an ideal numbers, Mahmoud. I don't mean that this is a concrete numbers that we have to pursue. This is an ideal numbers, a percentage of funding each. Well, that very much depends, on the political will of the government and our efforts as well, and of course, how we can capitalize our position as an international university. If we cannot get collaborations from the state level, maybe we can also collaborate from university level, try to forge collaboration with other universities in China and the US, and perhaps the funding, it might not be significant as the state, yeah, especially right now with the global economic challenges. So this is an ideal numbers. Number two, I would like to address Professor Faris Nur. I agree with you that the universities, they produce intellectual elite, yeah, and many of them also perhaps they will try to accommodate the interests of the state. Many of them, when they study at university, they dream of becoming a politician. They dream of becoming a governor, also a president, and which means that attention to forge or pay attention to subjects like science, engineering, like what the Chinese are doing now, probably still a long way to go. This is a political problems that we are facing. I would like to address also Sirajuddin about this. What we need, maybe, yes, we need to be, we need to feel threatened, but Indonesia is so spoiled nations. We are big populations, rich in natural resources, and then finally we end up, making capitalizing our population as a market only. Yeah, we don't really produce things here in Indonesia. We use, we buy, we consume. Yeah, and that is a very sad thing, I believe. And I remember, Sirajuddin, when I think during Suharto regime, the new order, when they installed Habibi, yeah, I think it was the right decisions, in terms of national policy to advance technological advancement, yeah, by producing airplanes. However, as we know that Habibi was was obstructed by politicians. Remember when one of the airplanes was not being granted by the United States for a standardized things like that, when many politicians, were banging him, yeah, until it failed, yeah. And when the airplane was in exchange with a rice at the time, it was so uh, political headlines in the newspaper. So there were many people who really don't like this. Politicians really don't like this, and I think Habibi's project unfortunately failed. We are still producing airplanes, but not as what Suharto had dreamed of, I believe. If we had been consistent in that, supporting Habibi's project at a time, I think things like AI, things like coding, is nothing. I think we have already much more in advance right now as the nations. However, of course, better late than never. The government now, the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education, they have been introducing artificial intelligence and coding for secondary education right now. It is better late than never. I know it's a small step, yeah, but I think it is in the right decision. So we hope that uh, we can feel, think like the Chinese are thinking, that the engineering things, the technological things are very much important. They produce times PhD double than the US. You can see how they think that this is an important matter, for the countries. Of course, social scientists like us are important, but I think we need more engineers. Yeah. So I'm so happy that we now have a new faculty. What you call it? I just asked Pak Lukman, the official name of this faculty of science and technology. And I look at the website, they are going to focus on data science, mathematics, computer science, information engineering, information system statistics. I think this is the right way. Of course, yeah, it's still a long way to go, and there are also political obstacles from politicians, even from students. at universities that are going to be part of the society, becoming an intellectual elite and then becoming politicians, and they will support the status quo. They will support the status quo of the regime, and they don't care about advancing their nations. I agree with you. The South Korea was threatened by North Korea. Singapore was threatened because it is small and etc. We have to find something that can threaten us, Mahmoud. Yeah, I don't know. maybe you can think about things like that. But anyway, that we have now a new faculty of science and technology, and now the government now in the secondary education are trying to introduce artificial intelligence and coding. Also, is a small steps. Yeah, I think we are in the right decision. It's for us at the university, at this international university, to be really aware of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parfa. We are looking for more questions. Yeah, we have only. Yes. Does anybody have any questions? All right. So there's a question. Do you assess how bearing some international students, candidates enrolling top universities like Harvard will impact US higher education quality in the future? Can you scroll down? Scroll down, the name. Afifuddin for University.
Thank you, Pa Afifuddin from Innovasi. Do you assess how barring some interested student candidates enrolling top university like Harvard will impact U.S. higher education quality in the future? Yes, of course. Yeah, there will be some impacts. But I think this is different than the situation in the Southeast Asian countries like in Indonesia. Faris said we are still grappling with the colonization. In the United States, if you ask whether will have an impact on education quality in the US, of course, yeah, I believe there will be some impacts, yeah. Because as far as I understand, the creativity, innovation, the ecosystem of creativity, innovation is so very profound in the United States. That's why they have a lot of patents, a lot of innovation, creativity. Even the Chinese, are actually copying them, and then making them better. Yeah. The Chinese. So the creativity, innovations, I think is still the ecosystem of the American universities. If you ask me whether it will have an impact, ideally, of course, it will have impact. But of course, it will very much depends on the individual students. Whether they will pursue what they have studied at Harvard University, for example, or not. Yeah, but since they had already enrolled at Ivy League University, I believe they will have a profound impact when they finish, whether in government sectors or in private sectors. Particularly in the private sectors, the United States really pursue, the culture of entrepreneurship. Even the legality support from the government is so easy. Yeah, as far as I understand from my colleague, to start a startup, for example, people from immigrants, an immigrant like Elon Musk, for example, from South Africa, now becomes a billionaire there, influencing U.S. politics as well. He's an immigrant. He was not born in the U.S. Why he became so successful? Because of the ecosystem of the U.S. That make it possible for creativity, innovations, and support from the legality of the government. For entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, to to do something unthinkable. Yeah, when we talk about artificial intelligence, when we talk about AI, if you compare Grok, Faris, maybe you're using Grok and DeepSeek. I think Grok is much more superior than DeepSeek. And why? Because why is that? That is because of the creativity and innovation, and it is going free. There's a feature in Grok, Imagine, that making a still photo becoming live. I already sent it to Amanda. The photo, it was the photo that I sent to you during the ceremony. It was made by Grok. Yeah, so that still photo was moving, because of that. And the DeepSeek Chinese made cannot still be able to do that. This is made by AI made by Elon Musk, the United in the US. So we can say that the creativity innovation is still very profound in the US. Yeah, that what makes America number one, I think, in that one. The Chinese are copying it, making it better, making a better electric vehicles. Yeah, cheaper. Yeah, but that started in the US with creativity and innovation. Thank you, Pa Afif, for attending this. Thank you so much.
All right, it reminds me. All right, yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Amanda Tuzet. I'm from Humboldt University, Berlin, and currently at the Faculty of Islamic Studies as a visiting scholar for 2 months. So maybe I can add another perspective on this topic, because what I am interested in is what does all of this mean for Islamic universities in Indonesia? Because when we look back at the Suharto era, when the US used education as a soft power instrument, they also targeted especially Islamic higher education institutes, the PTAIN, the EINs in Indonesia. So they also the US left a big impact on Islamic higher education in Indonesia and on Islamic intellectualism in Indonesia. So what I'm now looking at in my own research is how China is kind of doing the same by targeting cooperation with especially Muhammadiyah universities. So at many Muhammadiyah campuses in Indonesia, you now have China corners, Mandarin is taught, and there's increased of sending of students, Indonesian students, to China to study there. So how do you assess this? What will this Chinese influence mean in the future for Islamic higher education in Indonesia and for Islamic intellectualism? Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, for your insight. I remember about 5 years ago now, I talked with one of the rector of Muhammadiyah University. They've been trying to forge relation 5 years ago with the Chinese. Very carefully because of the issue of communism. That's 5 years ago, but now it's no longer an issue. Yeah, now they have China corners. Yeah, at their university, so then they become much more pragmatic, and the Chinese also are becoming more pragmatic. We now have a lot of educational institutions, Chinese educational institution in Indonesia. I've been approached by some of them offering educational services to educate the graduate SMK students, vocational students, to give them Mandarin courses, with with the possibility being employed by um, by a BYD, what you call it, a factory. Yeah, in Indonesia, we now have BYD wooling factories in some of our countries because the government demand a local content, local components of the productions. So we have those factories, and these companies, these educational companies from China, they try to recruit graduates from SMK student of Muhammadiyah, to be employed by these electronic vehicle, Chinese electric vehicles companies in Indonesia. And if you ask the impact, this is in secondary education and university. You already know better than me. Yeah? I think the impact can be so profound, but I don't see any ideological issue here. No longer ideological issue. It's so people are more becoming pragmatic. If we cannot force the state, to do reform, to pay attention to subjects like sciences, STEM, etc. Maybe we can do it in a private way. So the universities of Muhammadiyah and other private universities, perhaps from Nadatul Ulama universities and other Islamic organizations, they can have a cooperation with Chinese educational institutions, to strengthen things like engineering, applied sciences. China is focusing on applied sciences. They don't really care about critical thinking, but they care about how things can move logically, mathematically, and can be applied soon, yeah, and bring benefits to mankind. So both of them are very strategic. It's just a different way of pursuing. So I believe it will have a profound impact if more and more private educational sectors like Muhammadiyah universities and secondary educations, are forging cooperation with the Chinese institution. They will have a profound impact. Maybe in 10 years, it's about technology. I don't know. Beyond 10 years, maybe there will be some ideological issues. It could be, but I cannot predict to that yet. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mahmoud. Okay, Pak Alpa, I would like to ask a simple question when you saw what the title. So most likely you just comparing the whole education system, right? So, but from my experience or from my perspective, so I think that China is much more advanced in terms of science, technology, or applied science, but in terms of humanities, social sciences, they are, compared to US, compared to the West, they are very lag behind. Even my background is in educational administration and leadership, so all of the Chinese university or Chinese faculty of education, they always borrow something from the West, right? So I think behind that is what you call as the cultures or the situation that how to make that the country in terms of what you call as social dynamics are much more advanced. So China is very best in terms of meritocracy, but how can sustain, for example, because of this is one party policy in the country, can sustain, after 100 years. So do you predict about that one? Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Babang. I think about a month ago, I talked to the CEO of this Chinese educational company. It's a company. It's not an, it's a company, and he's still a young man, 24 years old, graduating from Australian University, but studied Bahasa Indonesia at Gajah Mada University. So he speaks Bahasa Indonesia very fluently, and he told me that I think only very few universities in in China, that would produce people who would like to work in the government and who master in social sciences. What I mean, Pak Bambang, yeah, most of the universities in China, they always have industry, entrepreneurship department, things like that, almost everywhere, every university. So you are right, yeah. But how can we balance that? Again, Pak Bambang, as I mentioned in my presentation, we can learn from South Korea. South Korea hybridizing US innovation, creativity with Chinese efficiency. Yeah. From the papers that I read, from the references that I read. Also Vietnam. So we have to play smart, I think. Yeah. To play smart. But Pak Bambang, I think we've been very much focusing too much already in social sciences. We have to move a little bit, to make it balance. So I don't think we don't need to be worried. There are a lot of things, a lot of significant numbers of intellectuals who are still very happy with their, with the, with this, with humanity, things like that. And I think we are part of that also, Pa Bambang. But I think if we want to do research, is this time for us, to also touch on the issue of technology. Maybe we can do a research on society and technology, like my colleague in NTU, Professor Sofikar Amir, is in NTU in Singapore, is majoring in technology and society. So maybe if we in social sciences, we can move a little bit, and then pay our attention more, to issue like society and technology. So we don't need to worry about. I think we are going to diminish our humanity because of the one party system of the China. We don't know very much about China actually. If we I heard from some people, when you try to look at their government system, it is more like bureaucracy. It's just like a government. When you are a member of a political party, Chinese political party is embedded with the position with the government. So it's more about, it's more about uh, it's just that the system, the way they govern themselves. So it's no longer an issue like in 1950s when we still have a Cold War. Communism is the danger of like that. Now it's becoming it has become so systematically embedded in the way they govern themselves. Even when you become like want to become a president of China, you have to go through a very highly selective, highly competitive phases. Like when you want to pursue your career in bureaucracy, you go to director, directorate general, things like that. And that's the way they do also in their political parties that embedded with the government. So it's just the way they they govern themselves. And I think many people in the US, some politicians, ignoring this fact, and they try to attack the China, with their own perspective of the 1950s Cold War perspectives. Yeah, I think things have been changing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Baba.
Thank you so much. Any other question? Oh, uh, okay. Just one last comment. Looking at the questions from the online and expanding on Amanda's point, I think looking back in my country, Afghanistan, for the last 20 years, like US has a soft power in terms of providing scholarship, in terms of USAID assistance and all those things, like Fulbright, FLTA. So now that they have dissolved USAID and there's no scholarship for the international students, I can see the shift from the US to the China, because China is providing lots of more scholarship, and I see the soft power it's this dynamic change. And in terms of the looking, I was reading this research, and that was talking that the US is focusing more, the US higher education is more focusing, as you said, that they're focusing more on critical thinking, innovation, creativity, whereas in that research they said that US has a high context culture and China has a low context culture. They're more focusing on disciplined. So, and then and I found in your presentation that they are focusing more on STEMs. So, how do you see that?
Yeah, I think it is very clear, when you try to focus yourself on being disciplined, rote learning, and then very serious when they do the national examinations, uh, uh, people like this, students like this, I believe, they're very suitable, when they want to master some science, technology, engineering, mathematics, because they're disciplines and maybe less critical thinking. They have just to think, not just, but they have to think logically, and being disciplined with practice every day with mathematics and things like that, physics and things like that. I think it is practice also, exploring things like that. So it is a critical thinking, but not in the way the social scientists think of that. So being disciplined, being strict, to those things like that, I think it's very suitable for a society. If they want to forge or strengthen sciences, like mathematics, technology, engineering, like that. So I don't see there is nothing wrong with that. It is just yeah, a way for a society, to advance. And it's been proven that China has proven themselves, to be leading that. And if you can see how they become a production house, they produce almost everything, Pak Bambang, yeah, from jet to rocket to from bicycle, yeah, they produce almost everything you can imagine, and that really embarrassed the US because everything everything used in the US was made by China. Everyone they criticize when one I think the vice president of the United States, they're criticizing people using China product. At the same time they're using he is talking with a clip made in China, and then people appointed during that conversation, and it was really embarrassing him. So it's been proven that China has been successful in that, yeah, being disciplined, even to some aspect rote learning also, yeah. If you I remember when I read one of the media, when they do national exam, they were very serious, everything stands still, the bus stop, they would like they carry the students, they help carry the students. That's the culture of exam in the US. Well, in the United in Indonesia they abolish it because of the freedom. We want to be free from exam, I don't know. Yeah, I know we don't have vision. I don't think we have vision in our education. So hopefully that is not late for us to advance and try to play smart by capitalizing both the US and China, like what Singapore, Vietnam, South Korea are doing by capitalizing on both power to advance their nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alfa, for the engaging response. I think we wrap up this today's presentation with a souvenir. I would like to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Education, Professor Nina Nurmila, for granting the souvenir to Pa Alpha.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Thank you for